You can't hear. Oh, okay. It's very interesting. What are we supposed to turn in? Okay, so what you're supposed to turn in, Jordan, that's a great question. You're going to be turning in your pre-work, and then I'm going to be writing down who participates in the discussion, and that will be part of your points as well. All right, so your pre-work was just to come up with 3 questions and to respond to the prompt, how can fungi be used as a product? So we're going to look at this document that I just quickly made here so we can stay on track. Our warm-up question is, how many years does it take for a styrofoam cup to decompose? Don't Google. I want you to guess how many years. Do you think it's 100? Do you think it's 1,000,000? Do you think it's 10? How many years do you think it takes for styrofoam to decompose? Okay, we've got Jonathan saying 1. We've got 1,000, 10,000, another 1,000. Riley's like, I have no idea. Take a random guess, Riley. Even if you say like 2 years. Some sort of 1,000.1 years, 1 to 2 years, 3 million. Wow, you guys are kind of all over the place with this one. So the answer is really infinity. We don't know. We've never actually seen styrofoam decompose because it definitely takes more than 1,000,000 years. I believe the estimated is like 250 million. Might not seem that bad, but type a 1 in the chat if you've used styrofoam this year. Yeah, Lauren, you were the closest for sure. Yeah, a lot of us have, right? If you go, especially like if you're going to family parties, I feel like for some reason my family always wants to use styrofoam plates and I get so mad. And they never understand, but I'm like, this is so bad for the earth. Like, please. So Jonathan, that's under optimal conditions that we're talking about, which means that's a good point, right? If the weather is not perfect or other things are happening, right, or there's not enough bacteria or mushrooms or other things involved, it could take even longer. So styrofoam is one of the world's greatest evils, which is part of why I sent you guys that TED Talk, right? Because part of what we should be doing now as a society is thinking, how can we replace some of these really awful things with stuff that is biodegradable? So for those of us who watched the TED Talk, how long does it take, you think, for one of those mushroom styrofoam packagings to break down? A couple days, right? Really quick. So in that case, you could still have all your stuff wrapped in styrofoam, right? Because when do we use styrofoam for the most part, other than plates and cups, right? It's mostly packaging. So when you get a TV or you get a new computer, right, or you get any kind of new electronic, it's usually covered in styrofoam. And then what do you do with that styrofoam? You put it right in your garbage, right? And in fact, some people think you can recycle it. You can't, right? So it's mostly packaging. So imagine if you could just take your packaging and toss it in your backyard and then go out there a week later and it's gone, right? Well, if you try to, Jonathan, they'll take it out, right? So it's better to try to recycle for sure than to not. So that would be awesome, right? So how come that's not happening? That TED Talk is pretty old. Why is that not happening, do you guys think? And then I'm going to turn it over to you into the Socratic discussion, but that's why you hide it under stuff, yeah. But why do you think we're not using sustainable materials? It's harder to make the mushroom stuff? Maybe. Yeah, so it's definitely probably cheaper potentially to make styrofoam. We're stuck in our ways. Not enough people know about it. That's part of it, right? If you ask people how long it takes styrofoam to decompose, look at our class. We were all over the place. Imagine if you went out and asked a regular person on the street, right? They would probably think, oh, like a couple years. It's what we've been doing, right? Companies don't want to change it. I'm just going to drop this in the chat right here. The oil industry has a huge monopoly on this kind of stuff, right? They make a lot of money for making packaging. And they are very, very involved in the government because they lobby, right? So keep in mind that. How do we fight a company that's huge with a ton of money who's lobbying for awful practices for the earth? Can we fight that? Maybe, right? So now, actually, before we go to the Socratic seminar, take out the leader. Well, and too bad there's a bunch of people in the lobby, right? It's not just one. And a lot of companies. So really quickly, before we're going to go into the Socratic seminar, which I can tell you guys are going to have a lot of fun, exciting stuff to discuss. It's going to be amazing. We're going to really quickly talk about the project that's coming up and the Module 3 exam. I want to give you a little heads up about it. It doesn't show up yet for you on your course. So that's why we're going to talk about it. First of all, I only have 2 lessons left to write for this class. Almost done, right? So those are going to be appearing probably this weekend. And then you'll be able to do the entire class in its entirety if you want, right? Those are going to be 2 lessons involved in this module about feedback mechanisms and how life is organized. We have this classification and diversity project. Type a 1 in the chat if you've actually looked at this project. Good. I expect everyone at the virtual session to have looked at the project. Okay, Riley, we'll let you slide. You just woke up, you're out of it. So you can read about the project here in the turn-in, right? There's also a page where it describes what's the overview of it. You're going to want to start this soon, right? Because this project has a lot of steps. The first step is you're going to have to go out and take pictures. You need to either be taking a selfie of your beautiful face, or you need to have 3 fingers in the picture. That's so that I can actually tell that it's your picture and that you didn't just Google plant and take a picture of that, right? So if you have other circumstances where, for example, Elizabeth has visited Yellowstone and she actually saw the springs where some archaebacteria live, right? If you have extreme situations where you've actually been to places where you saw some of these things that were really cool, you can just send me an email and say, hey, I went on a trip, I have this picture, can I use it? Right? That's totally fine. If you have something like that, please let me know. How can I tell if it's your fingers? Well, I probably won't be able to, Riley, but at the same time, if you Google plant with 3 fingers in it, I doubt you're going to find that many pictures that already exist of that. And if you do, well, there you go. That's why we're doing 3 fingers. So you will need to take a picture of each kingdom, either with fingers or with your face in it. That's not the hard part, right? You could probably go out today and do that. By the way, it's mushroom season. Mushrooms are out. Right now is the time to go look for them. There's a bunch. And I'll help you identify them because I'm pretty good at it now. Plants, I'm not so good at. Good thing is there's apps for your phone for plants, which hopefully will help you, right? There's also a bunch of websites linked in this project for you to help yourself try to figure out what these things are. Now, this is hard, guys. Identifying is hard, and that's part of why we're doing it. I live in the city too, Jonathan. I have mushrooms all over. Do bonsai plants count? No. That's a domesticated plant, essentially. It does not count. I want to see nature in your pictures. Wild plants. It has to be wild. If it's growing in your yard, right, that's okay. Right, but I would prefer if you went out and found a plant maybe that was cool that you've never seen. So you could go to parks. You could go to forests or woods. You could literally walk around your neighborhood, right? Because so many neighborhoods have tons of trees and plants and stuff everywhere. You could use an apple tree if you find one. Sure. You could go to the zoo. Why not, right? You could take pictures of animals at the zoo. I have no problem with that. They're not domesticated. You will have to identify them though, right? Which, you know what, the zoo will probably tell you what their genus species is, so that might be even easier. Animal kingdom is probably going to be the easiest. Plants and mushrooms will be the hardest. Produce will be pretty easy just because there's not very many that you can actually see. So work on your identification, because if you get stuck, you have tons of time to email me and say, I'm confused, I need help, what is this, how do I do it? Right? There's also going to be an opportunity next Friday where you can come into MIWA between 1 and 3, and I will help you. Right? I have a ton of mushroom identification books. You can use those. If you bring your actual mushroom, I could help you identify it. If you take a bunch of pictures, we could look at the pictures and figure out what you have. So that's the one opportunity to come in person and work with me on identification. And you guys will see, I'm not going to know what every single thing is. Right? I wish. That would be cool. That's my goal. One day I'm just going to be able to point at everything and know what it is. So there's a checklist here to make sure you're getting all the right stuff, right? There's an example of a mushroom that I found in the fall. You won't find this mushroom right now because it's a fall mushroom, but still, right, you're going to be doing this essential thing. You're going to be identifying the genus and the species. I saw a lot of people just do genus when they did their classification practice, right? You can say if it has a common name, right? A lot of plants have common names. Then you're going to explain how you know it's that species. It has these features. It's purple. It has these color spores. It has these kind of leaves. It has this kind of stuff going on. That's how I know. The argument there, if you argue really well why you think it's something, even if you're wrong, right, you're still going to get points for that. Because this is about proving what you think it is. And if it is something, that could be two different species, right, but you say, oh, I saw these features and I think it's this plant or I think it's this mushroom, then you're going to get credit for that. Okay? So I want you guys to be thinking about this project already, because if you're not, May 11th is going to come up really quick. Other thing really quick before we start the Socratic seminar is the final exam, not final exam, the module exam for module 3 is the last exam that we're going to take. Module 4 is a research project. Some of you guys have already started looking at that. You're going to be writing a paper. There's not going to be a final exam for the class. The paper is the final exam. So this module 3 exam is going to be hard. It's going to put you in a real life situation. The thing is, you're only going to have an hour to do it. It's timed for a reason. You'll see when you get in the exam. So please don't open it and think, oh, I'll do this tomorrow. I'm going to look at it. It will expire and I'm not going to let you do it again. So make sure you're ready to take it. You're ready to spend an hour looking for answers. You're going to get to Google and research when you're doing the exam. Okay, so that's my little heads up about that. If you say, oh no, I didn't realize it was timed and I ran out of time. Oh well. Okay, so it's going to put you in some real life situations. I'm pretty excited about it. You guys are maybe going to like it. It's going to challenge you in a different kind of way. Okay, that is all the stuff that I have to say. Does anybody have questions about the class? I know we haven't, I don't know, Google it. Yeah, I know we haven't had a virtual session in a while. Does anybody have a question about something they're stuck on that they think other people might be stuck on? Other information about the class? So, is it optional? No, Jonathan, nothing is optional. Especially if you ask, then it's definitely required. So, we have a few new people in the class who maybe haven't done a Socratic seminar with us yet. So who can explain to us, either by speaking or in the chat, how we do Socratic seminars in this class? We argue a lot, ... Thank you, Destiny. Legitimate response. We ask questions and respond to them. Exactly. So somebody is going to volunteer a question here that either could be answered by the article or the video that we saw already. It could be an open-ended question, kind of like what I asked earlier, where I said, why aren't we using this mushroom styrofoam if it's so great? And then everyone in the group kind of responds and gives their opinion. You're trying to do two things. You're trying to, one, respond once, at the very least, and two, you're trying to add on to someone's answer and not just going, yeah, I agree with Elizabeth. That's not adding on. You could say, Elizabeth said, yeah, you have to ask a question and then respond to them as a group, and I'm going to add to that, right? You don't have to say I'm going to add to that, but also keep in mind, right, that maybe you want to refer to the article or you want to refer to the video. When I saw the video, I noticed blah, 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 right? That could be adding on to what she said already. So we're going to get started. Who would like to, it's where we as a class fight for victory. No, not where we fight for victory. Where we fight for understanding, maybe, is a way to phrase it. Who would like to pose us a question where we could, okay, Jordan already did it before I even got it out of my mouth. Where could this technology lead in the future? I think that's a great question, Jordan. I'm going to ask you to specify this technology. What specific technology are you talking about? Can you use your mic? You definitely can. If you're using your mic right now, Bella, we can't hear you, by the way. Make sure you unmute yourself if you're muted. But I think that's a great question. Where could this technology, I'm assuming you mean mushrooms as a product, right? What could this lead to in the future? So what do you guys think? Okay, say it loud.
Oh, it could make more jobs.
Okay, we got a nice thought here, more jobs. Sure, right? Jordan says growing microorganisms to form functioning objects is something I have never heard or seen before. Yeah, right? It's a pretty cool idea, but it's also like, well, duh, why haven't we been doing it? Okay, what else do we think here? Michelle says it could literally lead to more valuable information and discoveries. Less waste. That's a huge one, and it's obvious, but it's a big deal, right? Less waste. It's good. It could be a bad thing. Is that what you're trying to say, Vlada? Explain on that. Yeah, smarter decisions could be made when it comes to unnecessary waste. That's a really great comment there by Lauren, right? I think that's really true. We could be thinking, okay, well, maybe in some cases styrofoam is still going to be used, right? But maybe not always. I think it could lead to the large trash pile in the ocean to not growing any bigger. That is an excellent point by Juliana. It could lead to less pollution, which will benefit the earth and environment. Okay, can you explain that a little more, Jonathan? People making drugs out of mushrooms? I guess there are medicinal properties, right? There are a lot of uses for them in terms of treating cancer, treating viruses, right? So there are some possible medical implications, sure. Bella says, does making styrofoam use more workers, or does this mushroom product use more workers? It's a good question, Bella. It could definitely add more jobs, which will help over time, the economy over time, sure. Yeah, mushrooms are also a food source, right? So when we think about fungi as a product, we're having a lot of different ideas here. Food, possibly medicine, styrofoam, right? What else? Who read the actual article? How else can fungi be used as a product? Excellent point by Elizabeth. In the TED Talk, it only took 5 days for the mushroom to grow, for the product to grow. Yeah. It can clean developing countries' contaminated groundwater and give them healthy drinking water. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted you to get out of that article, is that it can clean water and soil. The mushrooms do a lot of work themselves. True. So Bella, I think maybe you're trying to say like the jobs thing. Maybe there wouldn't really be that many jobs because the mushrooms, you kind of just set them up and then they grow on their own. Yeah, how long does it take for plastic to be made? Does somebody want to Google that maybe? Because you're right, 5 days is really quick. To be made. Jonathan, yes, some fungi can be luminescent. So how could that be used as a product? I don't think that would work, Jordan. Could this be used for insulation? That is an awesome point by Destiny. Does anyone want to comment on that? I feel like we have a lot of ideas going on right now. Glow sticks. Okay. This is a great question by Lauren. So we have 2 questions. So let's take a little pause. Let's answer these 2 questions. Could this be used as insulation? And what are ways that the Earth's repair is actually helpful? Why would we need to repair the Earth? Okay, so Jordan is suggesting potentially we could use the luminescence of mushrooms to create light bulbs. Why not? Right? Juliana makes a good point. Insulation might be hard because the mushrooms might continue to grow, which could actually crack your wall and break your house. Yeah, that would be bad. Mushrooms could help clean oil spills. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. I saw Jay and assumed Jordan, but that was an excellent point, Jonathan. Thank you for calling me out on that. Not reading very well. We got a lot of stuff going on. I'm like reading quickly here. Yeah, I think Juliana's point is good there, right? Maybe as insulation, we could possibly play around with that, but it would maybe have to be maintained, right? Because mushrooms will just keep growing. And especially if they have a food source, right? They might also start breaking down the wood in your house because they decompose wood a lot of times. Yeah, exactly, Jonathan. It will rot the wood. Okay, so maybe not for insulation, but what about this other question that we were responding to? What are some ways that Earth's repair is helpful to the environment? Bella, referring back to the TED Talk, the man in the TED Talk said that the mycelium uses its own energy to grow. So could mushrooms be a natural energy source? That's a good thought, Bella. The problem, I think, would be harvesting that energy. Just like we have a hard time harvesting solar energy and other types of energy. So, Riley, why don't you phrase that as a question? Okay, Elizabeth just typed a lot. According to the plastics manufacturing industry, it takes around 3.4 megajoules of energy to make a typical 1-liter plastic bottle, cap, and packaging. Making enough plastic to bottle 31.2 billion liters of water required more than 106 billion megajoules of energy. Because a barrel of oil contains about 6,000 megajoules, the Pacific Institute estimates that the equivalent of more than 17 million barrels of oil were needed to produce these plastic bottles. Okay, so a lot of oil is used. Is any oil used to make mushroom styrofoam? Yeah, they didn't, right? Riley has a great question here, guys, because partially I think because Riley didn't do the pre-work. So that makes it a little harder to know exactly what we're talking about and why. But why would mushrooms benefit us, right? Why would we use them in these ways? Yeah, Jonathan makes a good point. We have other sustainable ways to harvest energy. Nuclear energy, maybe not the most sustainable, but wind energy, right? Solar energy are sustainable, and we're already working on harvesting those. Destiny says we need minimal machines to create mushroom styrofoam. Yeah, Riley says you were working on English a lot. Okay. It saves our planet so we could pass it down to our children. It's a renewable resource. Yeah, I think Vlada brings up a good point. Are there any negatives about this topic?
The lady for the article,
Mm-hmm.
micromediation infusion use a lot of mycelium,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot is needed. But how would they harvest enough of that matter
To use it?
use it?
So the mycelium is basically growing underground in the soil, right? And when we see a mushroom, that's just part of it. Most of the mushrooms actually underground, you don't see it. So every time you walk around in the forest, you're stepping on mushrooms. You don't even know. In fact, some of them span millions of miles, right? I'll go into my cool fun facts about mushrooms in a second. But regardless, that mycelium, basically you could take any soil and you can separate it out. And it looks like little white fibers usually. Sometimes it's like brown or black. And then basically as long as you give the mycelium its food source, it will continue to grow. So it's similar to like how you culture bacteria. Bacteria, you take some sample of that bacteria, you put it on a dish and it will grow. You can do the same thing. You can take some mycelium from soil, from nature that already exists. We could put it on wood if it decomposes wood. We could put it on manure if it decomposes manure. And then the mycelium will just continue to grow. would there be a lack of mushrooms impacting the ecosystem? So great question. So even if you take mycelium out of the ecosystem, it will completely replenish itself in the ecosystem. This is a good point by Riley. Could it cause molding? Mold is a form of fungus, right? So that's definitely something that could potentially happen. Mushrooms could be taken from their natural habitats and then taken over other places. It would be an invasive species. True, but as far as we know right now, for the most part, mushrooms aren't exactly the same as plants, right, in terms of their role. They're decomposers. So really, they wouldn't invade necessarily, but they could destroy a forest. There are mushrooms that kill trees, right? Can you imagine that? A tiny mushroom killing a tree? It happens. So would I personally be willing to grow mushrooms for my own use? That's a good question. Let's see if other people would say that. Destiny, that's a good one. A renewable source is nuclear. It's just unstable and not that safe. Yeah, but it still uses a lot of energy to produce. The way you explained it makes much more sense. Yep, because it's a fungi. Yes, yes, yes. Is this a sanitary process if it makes packaging for food? Okay, that's a great question by Elizabeth, right? Especially in terms of, guess what? People are allergic to mushrooms. So certain mushrooms can cause allergies just like food and plants. So if we were using mushrooms to create packaging for food, we might end up having people developing allergies. Could there be any negative impact on the ecosystem from harvesting as much mushrooms as it would take to use it for packaging? It's a great question. What do you guys think? I think so if it's cleaned and cooked like it was in the video, okay? I would not feel comfortable if my food was being touched by decomposers. So let me ask you guys this though. If we have a package that's capable of decomposing, and let's say we put milk in it, is the shelf life of that product going to be impacted?
Wouldn't it make it go faster? Just be like insulated.
Yeah, well, the package is going to decompose. Does decomposition just like start immediately, or does it wait a while and then start? It starts immediately, right? So if decomposition is immediately starting, then the package in theory could decompose before the food. Exactly, Juliana. Wouldn't the decomposers end up decomposing some of the food? Yeah. Now, are you slowly becoming more blonde because you're thinking that are fungi used in medicines? They are, right? But not as much as they could be. So that's a lot of decomposers or decomposing. Yeah. So that's the issue with using decomposable things for food. Now, what about for like a plastic fork or a straw that just touches food and then you throw it away and it decomposes, right? That would be a little bit different than a container to hold your food. Yeah, I think Elizabeth brings up a great point, bringing us back on topic, really. Maybe this type of mushroom packaging should just be used as a form of styrofoam. Jonathan, did you watch the TED Talk video? Because I bet somebody can answer your question that you just asked. Jonathan said, how would you get fungi to hold a hard form? Thank you, Bella. The mycelium is a natural polymer. It can become really thick. In fact, some mushrooms, when you touch them, even not just the mycelium, but the actual fruiting body, they're so hard that I actually broke one of my nails trying to pick one off a tree once. So they can be really, really strong. It should replace styrofoam. It's like a glue. Yeah, exactly. So the mycelium grows and actually just gets really, really dense, and it is super strong, right? But keep in mind, is styrofoam the strongest of materials? No. I mean, we're not trying to build a house out of mushrooms. We're trying to build styrofoam. It would be cool to build a house out of them, though. Okay, do we have any other? Ooh, to add on to Bella, they use things like husks and wood so it can form into a shape and have some sort of structure. Exactly, right? So there's a mold. They're not just like letting the mycelium grow and then trying to make it into styrofoam. They're having it grow in a mold so that it comes into the right shape. Great question from Juliana. What do you guys think? How difficult would it be to switch from styrofoam to this mycelium product? So it doesn't, Jonathan, because it runs out of food, right? Because it's usually used for wrapping technology or electronics, which will decompose eventually, but mushrooms aren't going to be eating that right away. Yeah. Oh, and I love this contribution by Peyton right here. Not only was he focused on decomposition, right, but in the TED Talk, he was using natural products from around the world so that when it's shipped, it would decompose easily and be incorporated into their native soil. Exactly. So we have different plants here than they have in, let's say, the Philippines. So we would want to make that mycelium match the soil that it's going to be buried into. Yeah, awesome. So Elizabeth adds on to that and says, great point. Since natural stuff from different places in the world can make the product, the mushroom products would be able to be made internationally. Exactly. So you could still ship internationally. This wouldn't just be only in the United States. Jordan makes a good point. Big corporations would do anything in their power to shut it down, and they will sponsor and invest in it. True, but will they make a lot of money from this? How much money do you think would be in this industry? Yeah, how much would this product cost? That's a good question. And who would want to buy fungus? People who care about the earth, Jonathan. That's who. Okay, Jordan, amazing question. Is money more important to us than saving the earth? Let's see, Jonathan. Oh, you don't want a mushroom fork. I would use a mushroom fork. A lot of money could be in the industry if it replaced styrofoam. True. Jonathan said depends, so I'm not sure. So to the people making money, they care more about money. You need money to save the world, Vlada says. Since oil isn't as heavily used in the industry, it might cost less than the plastic industry, Elizabeth says. It would, right? And the oil industry would be upset by that. This is the big question and why it's not being used right now. How can we get big companies and governments behind this? I think that's a really important question. Let's address that one. How can we get big companies and governments behind this idea? Okay, I like Vlada's idea. Maybe make this a worldwide thing, because then possibly influence from other countries could pressure the United States to act. Sure. You don't think anybody would want to eat with fungi? Okay, but that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about styrofoam. We need to show them how it will benefit our Earth, since governments can fund things to do with global warming, so why can't they fund this? True, right? So why couldn't this be part of a global warming initiative? Well, do we want to start with the government, or can we start at a smaller level? Present them with research, very important, and statistics. Could we start at a smaller level though? Jordan says charity with a question mark. Possibly, right? We could do like a GoFundMe or something like that. Awesome. Juliana has hit it on the head right here. We could get a company like Amazon on board. That's what you need to do. Get big companies on board, and then it will trickle to everyone else, right? Because if you're the only person using styrofoam, you're going to look pretty bad. Yeah, and we could start with something smaller than Amazon, maybe some tech companies, right? Some startup companies, right? Then maybe try to get eBay and Amazon on board, because you know what? I'm sure Amazon does care about their impact on the environment, right? And their carbon footprint. We could use the fungi to eat bacteria. They do actually kill bacteria, Jonathan, so that's a good point. Yeah, start with local businesses, right? Because the other thing, like you guys said, does everyone even know this is a thing? No, right? Part of it is like spreading the word and explaining what's going on and what possibilities there are. Well, is Walgreens a local business? That's like a national chain. So, but sure, any kind of company that we could get on board, we could start building from there. Yeah, if you went out and asked random people, they definitely would not know about this. Did you know mushrooms could be used to styrofoam? They'd be like, huh? Because what's interesting, guys, is that people have a fear of mushrooms, right? Some of you might even be feeling it right now. You're like, ew, mushrooms are gross. They're scary, right? They are weird. And people do think they're strange. And for the most part, we haven't done enough research on them because most people are scared of them and think they're useless. But now we know that they're actually amazing. Or at least they have potential, right? Yeah, they look at you like you're crazy. Okay, so we're going to spend like 2 more minutes on this, and then I'm going to tell you guys a fun fact about mushrooms, and then we're going to end this virtual session. So here's who I have talking so far, just in case I missed anyone. Now's your time to tell me. I have Jordan, Lauren, Vlada, Juliana, Jonathan, Destiny, Elizabeth, Peyton. I wrote Destiny twice. Michelle, Riley, and Miss Wood, who's in here with me. Those are the people that I have who spoke. I also have these people adding on to what someone else said. Jordan, Lauren, Vlada, Juliana, Jonathan, Destiny, Miss Wood, Riley, Michelle, Peyton, and Elizabeth. So pretty much everybody added on to this. No, I just was trying to like keep it professional.
People do that.
Oh, no. Okay, so, Bella, thank you. You did. You actually added on to someone as well. I knew I missed someone. There was so much talking going on. Anybody else think they spoke or that I missed them or know that they added on and I missed them? Okay. Yep. Okay, cool. So I got everybody. So then let's have our final thoughts on this. Let's answer our big overall question. How do you guys think fungi should be used as a product for our future world here? Jonathan says a cleaning product. Okay, that's a possibility. To clean waste, sure. As a source for cleaning water and as packaging. Excellent. Packaging to replace styrofoam. Definitely packaging. Okay, a lot of people on board with the packaging. So that myco remediation little article that you read, right, that's kind of a newer idea. There's a lot of thoughts about being able to replenish agricultural land, replenish forests, based on using mushrooms to help with that. Juliana says maybe possibly medicine. Awareness needs to be raised about the fungi products so that small to large businesses will be interested in this type of packaging. Having a hard time reading today. It should be used to replace temporary objects like styrofoam, but not long-lasting objects like tables or chairs because they could decompose themselves. Yes. Maybe like the National Park Service could talk about it. Mm-hmm. We could definitely use it in medicines. I think using it in a place of plastic packaging is good, but its ability to clean water and contaminated soils to heal the earth is most exciting to me. I agree, right? Because maybe right in where we live, we don't have super unclean water or soil, but it is a thing everywhere. Objects that take a long time to decompose. Oh no, Mally's computer died. Well, she got most of it. And I got her speaking, so she's good. Okay. So then now I'm going to tell you guys a little fun fact about mushrooms, and then we're going to end this virtual session. So I've been reading this book. It's actually called Mycelium Running, and it's all about using mushrooms as a product. Haha, imagine where I got the idea from. But anyway, it's like super scientific the way that it's designed. They have charts and a ton of research and pictures and stuff in it. It's really cool, but it's really dense. Like I can only read like 10 pages at a time because it's so much material. So the most interesting stuff that I've learned about so far is, the first thing is that fungi has intelligence. When they took slime mold, which I know it's a mold, you're like, ew, mold, and they put it at the beginning of a maze, right? So imagine you have a giant maze in front of you. The fungi would grow the quickest way through the maze. It wouldn't go to any dead ends. It wouldn't go the wrong way. It would go the quickest way every single time. They did it a bunch of times too, a lot of trials to prove that it's not random, right? It didn't just happen to do that. It knew, it was smart. It sent out signals to figure out how to get the fastest way. Right now, the way they did it was they put food at the other side. So it could sense where the food was and it grew towards the food in the quickest, most like economical way to get there, right? And yeah, maybe it's smarter than some humans. Does that mean? Well, I mean, can humans go through a maze without getting lost? No. Yeah, no, you can't just know exactly how to go through the maze, right? Sometimes you can. Yeah, so that's the first thing, right? They have intelligence. They're aware of what's going on. Now, the other interesting thing has to do with their relationship with trees. So they proved it wasn't luck, Riley, because they did it enough times, right? So if you have a bunch of trees, right? Let's say we have a Douglas fir tree and we have some other tree, they're growing. All of a sudden, the Douglas fir tree gets blocked. It doesn't have sun anymore. What impact will that have on the tree if it doesn't have sun? It will probably die. Why? It needs sunlight to grow, right? Photosynthesis. The tree needs sunlight to produce sugar. So what happens is the mycelium that's growing underneath the trees in the roots communicates with the trees at all times. It will see, oh, this tree, it doesn't have sunlight. It's not producing sugar. It's not doing well. The mushrooms will actually take sugar from other trees and feed it to the tree that needs sugar. They will literally keep a tree alive until hopefully that tree gets over whatever obstacle it has. So they did an experiment where they could radioactively label carbon and they could trace where the sugars were going, and sugars were leaving trees, not even of the same species, like completely different trees, were donating sugars to the mycelium who were feeding the trees that needed sugar. Right? So I went through a glass maze blindfolded and I made it my first try. Wow, that was pretty cool. Destiny says relationship goals. Yeah, exactly. Right? So the mushrooms and mycelium are really important in forest and ecosystem health. They are kind of like in charge of it in a way. They know exactly what's going on. They know what trees are healthy. They know which ones aren't. Some of mushrooms' role is actually to kill trees and create new soil. So there's a ton of science research that really has only been happening in the last 20 to 30 years on mushrooms, because before that we just thought they were decomposers and whatever, that's all they did. Now we're seeing, oh wait, they do a lot of stuff, they're smart, they know a lot. And remember, they're the most closely related to you, right? They're more closely related to you than plants are, protists, bacteria, anything. So pretty interesting stuff. All right, so we're gonna end the virtual session here. Make sure you try to do your project as soon as you can, right? Especially we're gonna have nice weather. Take advantage of the nice weather. Go outside, take some pictures and stuff, try to identify it. Let me know if you need help. Otherwise, I have everybody who spoke written down here, and if you haven't turned in your pre-work, turn it in now so that I can grade you for being in the Socratic seminar. And otherwise, I will see you guys next Friday.